O King, my King, St. John the Baptist warned the Pharisees in Matthew 3, For now the axe is laid to the root of the trees. Every tree, therefore, that doth not yield good fruit shall be cut down and cast into the fire. What are trees? Well, Your Majesty, there are a bunch of things, a lot of things. And when your reign begins, you had best lay the axe at the root of every tree in your kingdom, because the heaven has high standards, and so do you. 1. When you've a case of stubborn weeds in your garden, first you try to cut them, then you try to uproot them, and then you have to mulch over them. This is what it is to possess problems in a kingdom, to work gradual solutions until the problem is no longer a problem. 2. You will want to be kind and merciful, but you will also need to be just in order to fulfill these things. You cannot be kind and merciful to people you leave to be hounded by dogs, for the presence of dogs speaks as a testimony against your rule. 3. Therefore, when an occasion for justice comes, understand, Your Majesty, that when you make a decision, you quickly execute that decision with the might of your conviction. Evil will infect your own if you do not hate it. 4. And when a problem gets out of hand, you have to take drastic measures until that problem is contained. 5. Wrath is an unpleasant thing because you love your own people. The Lord permits evil to take place so as to test our faith, but remember what is important. You must also be wise, for we can unjustly give too great or too little a measure. 6. The greatest tree of evil is the demons and their prince, the red dragon, with his many heads and diadems. They manifest to man through man's sin. The church identifies it. You enact your measures against it. 7. For how does the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords in Revelation 19 come? On a white horse, triumphant, and he leaves the fowls of the air to devour his enemies. 8. The fowls of the air, whether they be insects or carrion birds, are like demons that feast on the flesh of evildoers. If men give themselves to corruption and refuse salvation, this is their fate. You must now isolate them from the kingdom before they drag others down with them. 9. Saint Michael the Archangel will chain the demon. And so it is imperative that we, as a kingdom, maintain a mighty devotion to him and the other two named biblical angels, the Almighty One, Gabriel, and the Healer, Raphael. 10. Remember that if your enemies had authority over you, you'd share the fate of Christ and be persecuted. Mercy is simply giving a chance for good to triumph. But care that you aren't in negligence, that is, not bothering at all. 11. St. John the Baptist's tree was the state of man and his agency to this world. If men act well and spread the glory of God, then they are fruitful. 12. Ancient Jerusalem did not bear fruit. They were the fig tree that bore no figs, that Christ cursed to wither, and wither they did. 13. The ancient tenders were given to tend the vineyard to yield produce, but when God wanted his share of the produce, that is, men who would become saints, they killed his son to try to steal away his inheritance, preventing God from working through them like an eclipse. And when Christ died, a rupture occurred, and the Eternal Father cut them off through the sign of the earthquake and through the renting of the curtain in the temple. 14. The Eternal Father had given them space and offered up his son to continue to show his mercy. But they did not listen, and his son lamented over the city because of the result of that rejection was imminent. 15. And the axe chopped them down when the Romans had annihilated Jerusalem in 70 AD. 16. Cain slew the shepherd Abel, his brother, and became accursed to wander the wastelands, barren of the presence of God, because he and they refused him. 17. But now all of the peoples, the nations, the tongues, and the kings refuse him. The entire earth should be annihilated and cut off, because where in the woods? 18. The current state of our own shepherds of our time has not sufficed to protect their own. The woods have overgrown because the lumberjacks have fallen asleep. The wolves were fed, terrorizing the sheep because the shepherds are too busy making chat with the enemy. 19. Here is where you come in, my king. That instead of the entire earth becoming condemned, your faith will reignite Christendom, the kingdom of heaven, and give them that shepherd that won't fall asleep, or that lumberjack that will cut down all of the bad trees and throw them into the fire. 20. Why did it get this far? Well, when the Israelites wandered the desert, they complained that they wanted meat instead of the heavenly manna. God gave them meat to eat, all right. God gave our times plenty of meat to eat. He gave us all of the evil we could feast on, and now we sweat and breathe evil, and now we know the severity of it, the cost of it. 21. And so you must bathe the world in chastisement and a fiery penance, or the eternal Father will do this for you. What measure you show is the measure he will withdraw. 22. I only caution that you are a servant of God, and you will live every ounce of your life to that service. You have a chance to take a very high seat in heaven, and my job is to keep your focus entirely there so that you see nothing else in this existence except the place you belong, because it is your love for that place that will create the hatred you will have for evil. 23. And there, if I do my job, you and I will be praising the King of Kings and the Queen of Heaven in saecula saeculorum.